I'm David Chawo. I'm a lead scientist for climate change programs at Strathmore University and the International Foundation for Science Representative in Africa. COP27 is here in Egypt at Sharm el-Sheikh. It's a big time season in the African region, but also a very important signature for African leaders. Climate change has really had hard effects in African countries. You're aware of the current shortfalls in terms of rains going on in the Sahel region and the unpredictable rainfall patterns that are going on in East Africa. You're aware of the drought in Somalia. You're aware of drought in Kenya. Every part of Africa today is below threshold in terms of biodiversity resource. I mean, that big call for action is how do we do best research now? Research that addresses local needs. The key areas proposed by International Foundation for Science for engagement with the business schools includes addressing issues at local level, including food security, water scarcity, needs to do with biodiversity loss, needs around climate change and human health, but also need around green energy.
I really believe that business schools, school of business, have to be school for businesses because we are serving corporates. And if we are a school for businesses, we have to help businesses to be businesses for society.
We need to find our own voice. What is that African project, that exemplar project that we are going to coalesce around?
We really believe that things are different for Africa. The way we do business is different. The way we worry about resilience is different. We are looking to see the outtakes of the COP27 discussions and the adaptation related strategies. We're hoping that we can interpret it in meaningful ways to business sectors in the country and in Africa, and especially those in the informal sector and the SMEs.
For us at the business school, we set up a climate leadership program. We are looking at elements to do with the diplomacy. We are looking at elements to do with the climate financing. We are looking at climate budgeting. I think for us, let's move away from looking at business schools as just teaching for executives. But let's transform business schools both for executives and hubs for research. And I think that's why International Foundation for Science is coming in. Based on that trust that the policymakers has on business schools, the executives has on schools, the top business brands have on schools, then we get a stop shop where we can actually change their thinking. But at the same time, we identify projects, I think this has been mentioned repeatedly, which key projects would drive the climate leadership agenda for Africa.
What are the 6 most impactful paths that we need to pursue if we want to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals? Number 1, of course, being education.
I think we can have a profitable discussion about research. What topics do you think would make sense? How would you individually and collectively put your voices together so that that stuff is heard by other people? And what's an outreach strategy?
And so who is it we need to mobilize to create something that is more than just a conversation on business schools, but creates a pressure on society and on business schools to change?
I don't want us to get out of this room today without at least having a specific timeline or a framework of what are the next steps. And that was the specific purpose why we met today.
Africa is a young continent whose average age is 19 and is to be considered the continent of the future. We want to provide green energy. This will create an opportunity for the youth in Africa to work in the so-called 3D revolution that we are experiencing right now and shall experience in the next decades. The 3Ds are decarbonization. We don't want to have any carbon emission to stop global warming. Decentralization. We want to have smaller sizes of energy systems that do not damage nature. And finally, digitalization, where we want to use the Internet of Things and artificial intelligence to have an electric system which is smarter and more affordable.
Research in Africa must be used to solve problems, to drive both theory and practice, but most importantly, to contribute to solving some of the most pressing issues of Africa.
When it comes to research, it requires funding, and we need to work together to look at funding sources. Some of our schools might have some funding, but it is not sustainable for the long term. And our ambitions are big, so we need to work with corporate partners, with different organizations, but also with IFIs who can help us fund and have a more scalable and sustainable impact.
So IFS moving into the future is keen on really focusing strongly on working with business schools which have had trust from policymakers, which has had trust with business community, but also has trust with diplomats. And that way, we are able to mobilize a strong capacity building for a next generation of leaders in Africa to mitigate or to take action against climate change.